What's going on, guys? It's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione, and today we got Jeremy Avilla on the line. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on? Coach John, good to see you.
For those that may not be aware, so as far as our kind of connection, my I guess longest standing kind of coach, one of my mentors, Jesse Burdick, and I know so that we have that's kind of our connection there. But anyways, we'll kind of get into all that and some of your backstory as a lifter, kind of how you got started. But for those that maybe aren't familiar with who you are, who are you? Where are you from? And what do you got going on right now?
Yeah, my name's Jeremy. Of course, you got that one already. And I live out in the Bay Area, East Bay, and San Ramon. I train with, as you mentioned earlier, Jesse Burdick. We have that in common. Also, my mentor in life and in lifting, of course. Um, yeah, I've been powerlifting. I mean, I think I did my first competition about 10 years ago or so, or 11, and then I was powerlifting for a few years before that, before I competed, and yeah, and I spend most of my days in life in the gym. I work at a school, teach a PE class. I work with a lot of kids mostly, some powerlifters and some general population folks as well. I also assist Jesse with his. He has a strength and conditioning program where he works with a lot of really high level athletes. Softball, baseball, volleyball, and football are kind of the main ones, but we get a little bit of everybody in there. And yeah, that's kind of what I spend my day to day is. I spend a lot of hours with kids and coaching young athletes. And in my free time, I spend that time, training myself, and I got a bunch of wonderful training partners, and I still love to, train as a power lifter, but I also do in the off seasons love to just, move like an athlete or, bodybuilding and kind of a little bit of everything there.
Sure. I definitely want to touch on kind of like the environment that you kind of came up with because I think that's still, even though powerlifting has gotten really popular, I think kind of that even just having training partners is not like super common, I would say, like nowadays, especially regular training partners. I definitely want to touch on that. I definitely want to touch on the strength and conditioning side of things because I think there's still a lot of, you know, maybe myths and misconceptions in terms of like what's applicable or, there's a lot, I'm sure you see a lot of stuff out there as far as like what people are doing for athletes and, some ideas with that. Um, and then yeah, so but before we kind of get into all that, I just want to kind of hear like how you personally kind of got into lifting and then maybe like how what made you decide that you want to do your first meet. And then if you want to also before we kind of get into that, just if you want to share some of your iron cred, like what are some of your best lifts in competition and just any lifts that were like kind of notable for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when I was, getting started, raw with wraps was kind of very popular. So I'll start there. And my best lifts there is a 804 squat and a 440 bench and a 893 deadlift. But that all kind of got them all in different meets and stuff. And then my best total in wraps was 21-23, I think, or something right around there. And then my best total in sleeves was 1967, and that was about I don't know, like 6 or 7 or 8 years ago or something like that. It was a while ago because haven't my I competed in sleeves in a while. I should say haven't completed a meet in sleeves in a while. I did my actually just did one a couple weeks ago and got all my lifts. No all time PRs, but I made 9 for 9, which is probably a PR in itself right there. And I walked away healthy, which is also
Definitely.
very very cool. Yeah, I'm 37 and I got into powerlifting when I was around like 22 or 3, and I've just loved doing it ever since. Whether it's, obviously I love competing, and I love, sharing those numbers. I'm very proud of them, but the process and the training, and getting to lift with my training partners that has been a lot. That means a lot more to me than any of the numbers I've ever hit. Because that's what you spend most of your time doing. You get to compete 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year. If you're on the, if you're beginning, you're probably competing closer to 3 or 4 maybe. And then when you get closer to 40 or something like that, you're probably doing one, two, maybe three if you're like one of the exceptions there. But yeah, so I've been really lucky just to have throughout my entire career of powerlifting to have great training partners, and it's kept me in the sport, and it's kept it very fun and fulfilling for me.
Yeah, so can you share a little bit with the listeners, like kind of what the training dynamics like with your crew and like because I think obviously, we kind of trained under like a similar system, using some of like some of the West Side method and some of the conjugate principles and stuff. So if you could just maybe just talk about like the training dynamic and like maybe like how it lends itself to, and I'm sure things have obviously evolved and changed over the years, but I'm sure that's still like kind of at the cornerstone of, what you guys are doing and with some tweaks, of course. So tell us a little bit about like kind of like what like your kind of workouts kind of are looking like, especially kind of like leading into a competition.
Yeah, so of course it's changed over the years, but in general, yeah. So I work with Jesse Burdick. He does a conjugate style of training. So just to kind of give you an idea of like what an off season month might look like, we have a 4 day training week. 2 of those days are dynamic or repetition effort methods. 2 of those days are max effort. 2 of those days are upper body. 2 of those days are lower body. And I'd say in a given month, we're going to do 2 heavy deadlifts. Usually one of them is going to be a conventional, one of them is going to be a sumo. And then we have 2 heavy squats. Usually one of them is going to be a free squat and one of them is going to be a box squat. Just kind of in general, we go through different little phases and things like that where we might focus on more on one than the other, but that's pretty standard for us. And then we do, 4 max effort uppers, a month. And max effort upper is just, it's going to be something in like the 80 to 90% range usually. And then every once in a while, we're going to tap out, toward the top end, but usually in the 80, 90% range for 1 to 5 reps, and again, this is just, there's exceptions, but that's like pretty safe bet to go with, in a given month, especially in the off season. That's kind of the frequency in which we go. And on our dynamic days, so we
Just
will
really,
squat and deadlift
just really,
usually.
just really quick before you get into the dynamic days, because I know we talked about, I know like Jesse also had me do some good mornings here and there. I'm not sure if you guys still like kind of do heavy good mornings or if that's more an accessory. And then also on the for the upper body work, I know we would kind of rotate through sometimes even overhead work, sometimes like an overhead press if the athlete could do it, and then a board press, floor press, and then maybe like a full range press. Is that pretty similar or any kind of differences in terms of like how you guys do the upper body?
Yeah,
Max?
absolutely, absolutely. And it kind of depends on like the athlete. Jesse will, we still have a couple guys who lift in gear and stuff over here. As you know, we got a guy at our gym, Big Jake, and some of his accessory movements and things like that might look a little bit different than what some of the raw guys are doing. But I think we utilize a lot of like the shorter range of motion presses as like a way to still kind of lift something heavy, but almost like a built-in deload in a way, where we're not gonna not going the full range of motions. It can sometimes be a little bit easier, make it a little bit easier in certain parts of the lift, and it's not as fatiguing always. I would say, at least for me personally, being like a raw lifter. And then yeah, the heavy good mornings will like and overheads, like we'll sometimes put some of those like supplementary lifts as like a main lift, and again, it just kind of depends on the time of year. And for the raw guys, that's going to be a little bit less frequent, but we still kind of work that stuff in there. I think like our approach with like the programming is to kind of it's in the off season. It's a very general strength for powerlifting, general strength for powerlifting. Not trying to really hone in on one thing more than the other. And then as you get going, you might find where your weaknesses are after you've maybe spent a year doing these lifts. You can start to see where the kind of the weak links in the chain are, and from that point, you can kind of pilot it to tailor to the individual a little bit more. Where some guys might do some more benches with chains or bands, depending on where they're weak at in their lift or where they're missing or failing, things like that. But I'd say, for someone who's just walking in, we're going to keep it pretty general, like have them kind of, touch on a lot of different styles of presses and supplementary lifts, and then use those to kind of target in on any weaknesses. Because, one of the big principles in conjugate is, maintain your strengths and attack your weaknesses. Always try to, you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. Maybe you can get 500 pounds off your chest, but you can't lock out 450 or the other way around. So, if you're finding some of those things, if it's a strength issue, we want to try to address it obviously with technique, but using supplementary lifts to attack specific spots of the lift or where we're weak.
Awesome. And then going into the dynamic days, and this has always been, again, I don't know if you kind of see these arguments or not, but it's always been like a point of contention with the raw lifters, especially, and even some of the equipped lifters. Like, is there like value to it? Is it a waste of time? And I know you kind of did mention that you do like it's either dynamic or sometimes repetition effort, depending on if the goal is maybe just more muscle mass versus power. And then I know also you said you're also working with some athletes where that application could potentially become more prevalent if they're a power athlete or something like that. So walk us through like what some of the dynamic days would look like and maybe some of the applications based off, the person's goal.
Sure, and I think dynamic work is one of the most misunderstood and oftentimes misused efforts of conjugate training. You have your max effort, your dynamic effort, and your repetition effort, and then accessory effort. Those are kind of like the four things that are going to be touched on. And you're not usually going to do a dynamic effort and a max effort in the same workout, but you could very well do a repetition effort and dynamic effort in the same workout. And just to kind of touch on like what each one of those is, dynamic effort is usually going to be something with 70% to 40% straight weight. You may, add a chain or a block or anything like that, but usually we're not going to try to go over 70% straight weight. This is the weight that we want to be able to like move, you know, well without any like grindy reps or anything like that. And with the dynamic effort, what I love about it is that we're going to still get a little bit of volume, but we're going to keep the reps 1 to 5 reps, usually 1 to 3. And we're looking at, anywhere from 8 to 15 sets, sometimes up to 20 for a squat and deadlift. And then oftentimes we might do, 15 sets of squats, 10 sets of deadlifts. So you're looking at 25 working sets. But again, it's when you look at it as, we're doing 1 to 3 reps, we're going about every minute. So what I get from dynamic day and what we try to, give to our athletes when they're working that is an opportunity to work on their technique. In powerlifting, the first rep is the only one that matters. So you get 15 chances to get into your setup. You get 10 to 15 chances to walk the bar out, to really work on your technique. So I think one for working on technique is great. And of course, your technique with 50, 60, 70% might look a little different than when you start getting to 80 and 90. But what dynamic day can be is you might be able to find a position that feels really good there. And then you can try that theory out with your heavier weights. And sometimes it doesn't carry over. And sometimes it absolutely does. So for dynamic effort, what the things that we're looking to improve upon is our technique, our setups, starting position. And also another one in there is because we should be doing these in about 45 to second, anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds rest, our conditioning. And another great thing about it is we get a chance to pull even though it's 70%, we want to pull it like it's 100%. We want to pull it like we're pulling our top single. So this is a way for us to move at maximal velocity without having to put maximal weight on. So I think finding ways to increase intensity without adding weight to the bar is a huge benefit of the dynamic work, because you can increase the intensity by shortening the rest periods, adding more sets and reps. And it kind of just like by the time you get to your 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th set, sometimes, you're huffing and puffing a little bit. You have a little bit of fatigue built up. And I think when you have that fatigue built up also, you really try to find the most efficient way to move that bar, because you still want to have a certain amount of speed on the bar. We want to be able to maintain a certain speed. So I really enjoy it. Those are the days, like when I first came to the gym, I was not excited to do dynamic work. I was not like, yeah, like, getting really pumped up about it. But over the years, I love it. It's just, there's that saying, 10,000 different kicks versus one kick 10,000 times or however it goes. And that's kind of like dynamic work. It's like you're practicing this one kick 10,000 times. Like you're getting it down. And then when you get to, really find some, where your starting position is and get really confident in it, where you almost don't even have to think about it. Then when you get to your max effort work, you have, you don't have to really think so much about your setups and things like that. And everything, and it really helps dial in technique. I would say. So that's I think that's the main one that I really love about dynamic work. It's just a really good tool sharpener.
Yeah, I think for whatever reason, like because powerlifting is like the sport, and like powerlifting is often used as like the training for other sports, that we often forget about like that technique practice and just skill work is part of the equation for any like any sport. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think it's definitely like misunderstood and underutilized. And also I think that there's also something to be said about, I know like for myself, and I think you might maybe the opposite, you can comment on it if you'd like, but I know for me, like I didn't have like a naturally high like vertical like growing up and stuff, and I was more of like a slower lifter. So learning to kind of have intent and move the bar fast like definitely helped me quite a bit as I got stronger. And I think it definitely is something where if you can harness that speed, it could be another kind of tool in the toolbox. So I think that's some great insight there. So the other thing I wanted to touch on and kind of backtrack. So we kind of went over like kind of a good overview of like the West Side Conjugate system and your training style. So how does that like kind of play into like the group dynamic? And can you kind of maybe explain the best you can as far as like what is it like kind of training with partners, training with a crew, and how has that kind of helped you like over the years?
Yeah, so I would say just to not to keep focusing in on dynamic work, but especially on like a dynamic day, if you got a crew of 3 or 4 guys, you don't stop moving. One guy goes, the next guy goes, the next guy goes, the next guy goes. And if you're not, if it's not one of those days where everybody wants to, talk about their day and do all that stuff, there are those days, but like the dynamic group doesn't really leave a lot of time for that. So it's just you're going one after another, and you're not letting each other kind of sit around too much, and it really plays well into like group training, especially on the max effort days. So like it's like a different vibe each day. So like on a dynamic day, it's like, hey, like we got 25 working sets to get done. We can't fuck around. We got to move. And then on the max effort days, you want to have people there to spot you. You want to have people there, to have a little bit of hype and to have to bring some good energy into the group. And and those days are really fun, but just in a different kind of way, like having like a little bit different of a mindset for each day. And as far as like, just having good training partners is something that I've been really lucky with. Jesse just attracts a lot of different types of athletes. And, we have on a given day, we might have someone who's, training for baseball or training, or they're, maybe not competing, but they're just looking for general strength. And then maybe we have some powerlifting competitors. Now, the application of conjugate is going to look a lot different for someone who's an athlete. And again, I'm gonna say athlete as in like the traditional sense. Like you're playing this like power. The weightlifting is not your sport. You're using this to help you in your field sport, into your wrestling, into baseball, football, whatever it is. So that's going to look a lot different than someone who's training for powerlifting. So there's some crossover, obviously, but the focus, I would say, it's gonna not going to be as much like max effort or like heavy is not going to be as much of an emphasis. Repetition and dynamic work is going to be a lot more helpful for like your athlete, for your baseball player, football player, things like that. Um, and it's also it's a smaller part of their workout, too. Like Jesse has a couple different, he has a powerlifting program on the board, and then he has his awesome athlete program. There is some crossover. There is a lot of dynamic work. There's some max effort work in there, but that's about like 20% of the workout for the athletes. Whereas like the focus on that for powerlifters, it's going to be more closer to like 50%. Either person, I think in conjugate, the accessories are gonna like accessory like we do a lot of accessories. I know in a lot of like block periodization or like linear programs and things like that, or RPE programs. Like there's definitely a lot more barbell work, or that's more of like the focus. And yeah, so I would say like that's kind of like the main difference between like the athletes and then like the powerlifters.
Yeah, and then I guess like now that it seems like you're kind of also working with a lot more people yourself, and how, so if you want to share, like, how has that been, maybe working with some of like the kids and kind of bringing them into, teaching them like how to train and stuff. So if you, any thoughts on that, and like, how has that been going for you?
Oh, you know what? When, when I first got into like personal training and those things, in my mind, I was like, cool, I'm gonna train powerlifters all day. I'm gonna train athletes and all this stuff all day, and I still do get to work with some of those folks, but 80% of my clients are kids and young athletes and general population, and we of course use some aspects of powerlifting, but it is a very small percentage of what we do comparatively, to like my own training or to like like powerlifters. And with the kids and stuff, even with young athletes, a lot of it is general strength and conditioning. Even like you don't really get too sport specific until kids are a little bit older, or depending on like the kid too, it all depends on the athlete, but like in general most people need a strong base of just different movements and a general baseline of strength and conditioning before you can really start to do some of like the more specific training and things like that. So that's like kind of where we start a lot. And so with a lot of the newer kids, just getting them, number one is I want it to be fun for them. It's because for a lot of the kids that I work with, they don't necessarily, a lot of them don't necessarily want to, like, the gym is not their life. It's not their number one passion, right? Their passion lies outside the gym. But for them to enjoy, their sport more, we all know that, it's a lot more enjoyable to wrestle or to play football when you're in shape and when you're strong and when you're able to, move your body the way you want to. And so getting kids just to show up and eat and sleep and start to think about those things and how it can affect their performance is usually the number one thing. And just like, showing them that the gym is not a punishment, that it's a privilege to be here, and that it is going to help them with their sport. Because a lot of kids, they just want to play. They want to play their sport, or they want to, you know, kind of do their own little thing. So getting to work with them has been like really, really fun for me as a coach, because you just kind of have so many different options to kind of work with. I like just kind of finding out what the kid likes to do and making it kind of fun and gamifying it in the gym. Trying to make it feel more like play than training. That's usually with like with the younger kids. To and then slowly start adding in some competitive aspects of it. Even general population folks, I mean, if you start to, hey, like competing with themselves, like, hey, last week we did our 250-meter row in a minute and a half. Let's like tracking things and like starting to do that stuff, and tracking their lifts really helps, because it's pretty rare like in life where you get objective progress, and the gym really provides like instant feedback. You get an instant receipt. Are you performing better or are you not? And there's a lot of ways that we can do that. Like lifting more weight, lifting going a little faster on the on your run, going a little faster on your bike or whatever it is. So I think like, yeah, starting with general conditioning, strength and conditioning, just getting kids in shape, and then starting to gamify it and starting to add competitive elements to it, and encouraging tracking and things like that, really kind of helps them, remain motivated and inspired when they come in there.
Love it. And I totally agree with you. I think, yeah, there's something to be said about like being able to see like the work you put in and seeing that pay off and actually seeing the results. I think it's super important. And yeah, and I also agree with you about keeping it fun is important. And it could be a challenge sometimes. I used to coach middle school and elementary wrestling, and you want them to stick with it at the end of the day. You want them to be kind of physically active, as they get older. But yeah, if you can kind of get them to love the gym early on, that you're really kind of setting them up for success, later on in life. So if someone was maybe like on the fence of maybe getting into lifting or they're not really sure where to start, like what's like your biggest piece of advice for people that are just getting started?
I think finding a coach or finding, someone to kind of help guide you in the beginning is really important. I think a lot of times, sometimes people get into the gym, maybe they, hurt themselves or they're not getting the results that they want or they're not sure what to do or where to start. So like number one, like finding a guide, finding someone who has experience not just lifting, but look at the athletes they've coached and look at the people around them. Have they gotten better? Are they, have they, are they healthy? All those types of things like that is a good place to start. And then, just if you can, finding a good group of people to train with, having community is what really helps. I mean, whether you're a highly competitive athlete or you're someone who's just, maybe you're coming out of the office or you're a kid who doesn't really play sports but wants to still move their body, having community can really, really give you something else to look forward to in the gym. I know with a lot of the kids that I train with, they'll find their couple buddies and they're like, "Oh, where's Marcos today?" Or "Where's," they're looking forward to seeing their buddies. And then when you have a community like that, it makes it a lot easier when you're in a group to do hard things. Nobody wants to be the first one to quit the workout or to or wants to be like last in the workout and things like that. And so when you have a group, it just has this like built-in motivation. I see with kids especially that they work so much harder and when they're having fun, they're working harder without really noticing it. So I think being able to group kids together who have a good chemistry is something that I really try to do. I try to, look at my client list, and a lot of times I might reach out to the parents and say, hey, we have this time slot where we have these kids around, having peers, to train with people who are close to your level. You want to be training with somebody who's maybe a little better than you, and it's good to train with someone who's not as far along as you because it gives I really like to empower the kids. Like, hey, like, if I got a kid I've been training for a few years and we got a new guy coming in, I really like to have that kid. Hey, can you show him how to do this? I like to really, to give them that opportunity because it definitely gives them some purpose. It's like, oh, hey, like I do know what I'm doing in here. And then sometimes for a kid to hear it from another kid or see it from another kid is way more impactful than old me with my gray hairs. So being able to have, the community help coach, not just me, is has been a really good tool. And that's definitely something that I picked up from Jesse is he has such a strong nucleus of kids that when he gets a new kid who doesn't really know where to start or go, he can put them in a group with two or three of his kids that he's had for years, and in a couple weeks that kid's just he's firing, he's going. And when you have a group, when you have like 10 or 15 kids going at the same time, you're really depending on like the help of your other training partners or other kids in the class that you've had to help, maybe catch things and like things like that to help them kind of coach each other as well as you're kind of overseeing the whole thing. So I think like, yeah, again, let's to go back to the community and training partners, like really developing kids that, hey, it's not just all about you in here. You have other people that you're sharing the space with, you have training partners, and we want to be of service to them. Of course, we're looking to get things for ourselves, but the way that the group gets stronger quicker is to really think of others and I really try to encourage that for people and kids that I'm coaching with to look out for each other while we're in there and to bring a positive attitude and yeah, just setting the energy is a really important part of especially when you're not just doing personal training, but you're doing small groups or even big groups. I coached, I did strength and conditioning for one of the high schools by here, and we got 50 kids, at a time, and we got 1 hour. So you put them in the groups of 4 or 5, and you're really trying to go to, and to each, you got to maybe one kid out of that 5 has done some training, kind of knows what they're doing, and you're really trying to empower them, like, hey, like I need your help, like this is what we're doing today. Help watch your guys, like teaching them how to spot each other correctly, teaching, counting each other's reps, holding each other accountable. These are the things that really, really can help things progress a lot quicker than just of your own means, but to empower the people that you're coaching to help the others that come in. And again, like it really builds confidence, when you have a when kids get to help each other or get to be in a leadership role, it helps build confidence in the gym. And confidence in the gym is a huge thing. And then also in the same breath is, hey, it's okay to fail. It's okay if like we don't like quite meet our standards and stuff like that. And that's where like kind of keeping the positive attitude and making sure it's fun and playful. Having the right balance of like play and competition is something I really try to keep an eye on in my classes, and especially with the kids.
And I think everything that you kind of mentioned for those youth groups like also holds true for like our adults and all that. So I know like one of the things that I loved about like growing up in the more of the era of like the equipped lifting side of things, having someone wrap your knees, having someone get you in your squat seat, having someone run the cradle for the monolift, having someone hand you off in a bench shirt, like you said, spotting, and going back to the dynamic days, like you got to be quick with your plates, and you're trying to like keep everyone moving, and
Yeah.
I got so like everyone's kind of focused on whoever's going, but then when it's your turn, you get that attention, you get that support, and I think and not everyone gets to experience that, so I think that's amazing. So, but yeah, it was great having you on today, Jeremy. Where could people find you if they want to learn more about you and what you do?
Oh yeah, I'm just Instagram, Jeremy Avilla. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm just on that one. I don't do any of the X, Twitter, and I think I have a Facebook, but I don't really check it too much.
Thoughts?
But yeah, just on the Instagram.
Awesome, man. Well, it's great. I'm glad it's really cool to see you keep competing and that you're coaching others now, and it's great catching up. But definitely give Jeremy a follow. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, stay strong, and then we'll see you soon.
All right, take care.